Volunteering for your local sports team, kindergarten or environmental group can be really rewarding. It's a great way to give back to your community and support a kaupapa you're passionate about. But the roles can be complex, especially if you're appointed or elected chair. This video is one of a series of 4 that aims to help you step up and support the team. Or if you're thinking about becoming a chair, get you well prepared for your new role. These videos are part of the National Action Plan for Community Governance. The plan was created by community leaders to create resources to support you in your board roles. This 4th and final video is all about your role leading risk, compliance and other good board processes. Increasingly, the context in which the boards of community organisations operate is becoming more complex. More regulation, more laws, changes in laws, expectations for reporting. As busy volunteers, how do you keep up and ensure your board and your organisation is compliant, legal and doing everything it needs to be? Let's check in with some experienced chairs about how they manage and lead. How do you ensure your boards are compliant with laws and regulations like health and safety and manage risk successfully?
Oh man, there's so much. You know, there is so much that a board member must be over, and it's no longer a decent enough excuse to plead ignorance. You just can't. One, the law won't protect you in case of ignorance. And secondly, you're not doing your duty of care to the people that you're supporting, whether or not it's your staff, the vision or the kaupapa of the organisation or the board that you are sitting with.
It's actually not the board's job to do the compliance. It's the board's job to ask the questions and to make sure the processes are in place, and for management then to report to the board on what they're doing, and for the board to be suitably insightful and maybe even critical to then be able to evaluate what's happening. It's not the board's job to do it, that's the management job. So the board needs to just make sure those processes and systems are in place and to satisfy itself that they're operating effectively. And so you wouldn't be relying on the board to know the latest change to health and safety legislation, but the board does know to be asking questions about health and safety legislation and to be satisfied by the answers that you're getting back from the management.
The way that I operate is that I definitely keep my ear to the ground, especially in media. I watch and see what's going on in the Select Committee, in particular Māori Select Committee, so I see what is quite critical issues that are facing Māori. Hey, I'm big on social media, so I watch and see like key Māori influencers and understanding what they are talking about so that I can stay abreast of critical issues. And Māori media, there's a lot of noise as well, so we just have to be really careful that any information that we are absorbing is in alignment with the strategic objectives that we're trying to achieve, and most importantly, to keep us abreast of what's happening in the near future.
There are predictable, relatively standard risk matrices that boards should go through, and you need to bring your knowledge about the particular sector, the particular organisation to bear. So for example, if community trusts have got investment funds, then there are investment risks that we need to focus on that other organisations wouldn't.
We have to accept that risk is part of the job, and it's important. And there is unacceptable risk, which the health, safety and well-being of your team or lives are in danger, like that's unacceptable risk versus other calculated risks that you might take to help your organisation move forward. So they're quite different types of risks. So assessing what kind of risk you're dealing with, coming up with a strategy or a plan to be able to deal with those risks, and then also how do you mitigate or manage those risks as well. So as a team, we've got to look at what is our priority, because you can't deal with everything at once. But the most important things are, one, what's going to create a risk to our team. Financial risk is usually the second one that tends to be the high priority because we've got to stay alive.
Let's phone a friend, an expert in compliance and risk, to get his advice about how to stay on top. So what exactly are boards accountable for in terms of their accountability?
The main one is to oversee and protect the organisation's purpose or vision, its values and its resources. So that's a really important part of the board's responsibility. The board is also responsible for representing the interest of the stakeholders actually that are affected by the organisation within the context of the purpose, and sometimes organisations forget that actually we've got a whole heap of people out there we report to.
So how can chairs best support their boards to be compliant, manage risk well and be financially literate?
I thought today I might just touch on 3 tools that I've both seen and helped with. So the annual work plan is simply, during the year, we will talk about risk, strategy, the annual financial statements, budgets, team management at certain times of the year, and that's built in. And so when you come to the meetings about that time, you'll have information. So that just builds in the habit. The second part is the board agenda itself. If you've built in the important elements that the board should be accountable for, looking ahead, risk, compliance, financials, you actually will deal with that, at least think about it each meeting, and you lock that into the board agenda. The third one is the checking in approach, or the sort of a bastardised Socratic method. So what I see good chairs doing is when we're having discussion, before a decision is made, a big one, they'll go around and touch base with everyone, Jim, Jill, Johnny, have you got anything else to say? I noticed you didn't. Is there anything you want to contribute? Do you need more time? And then you get to the end and say, right, we're making a decision now. Everyone's had a chance to talk or be heard, and that's really important.
How can a chair make sure that they themselves and their board are aware of their financial position?
Yep. I think the first thing I always say to people is do not rely on the single person that say they understand the numbers, because we've all got a responsibility to understand or make decisions. So that's something I always start with. It tends to be an accountant or something as well, but they tend to get, everyone leaves it to them, and that's actually quite dangerous. The second part, what we've done in our own professional lives and with boards and chairs, developed 1 or 2 page dashboards with colours that help pinpoint certain risk areas. Are you running out of cash? Looking ahead 5 months, are we making money? What's coming up? We've got to worry about wage bills. But what we've also done is we've actually put on the reports themselves examples of what questions to ask about these reports, definitions of the words, what each column means. It's actually built into the report in plain English. Right. So you pick up the report and you go, what the hell is a budget variance? A budget variance is da-da-da-da-da. If it's over this amount, perhaps you'll ask this question. So board members get through, they actually learn that pretty quickly, but it's the new ones coming through or the people that aren't confident. Because if you give them a manual, even training, it doesn't work very well. You go, unless you're doing it all the time. So what we've tried to do is keep it relatively simple, but have all the explanations clear and on the reports themselves.
How does a chair help its board become aware of and manage its risks?
Yep. So what I suggest to people is you basically identify the 5 risks that will kill the organisation, if it's reputational, money, financial, and you start monitoring that, and you think about how can we mitigate it, which is to stop it happening, or if it does happen, to reduce what happens. The other one I often say to people then, if you just don't have the resources when you're starting off, is to also make sure you've got 1 or 2 risks that come from opportunities. So risk is a good thing if you're doing things. And then you either, if you've got management, get them to advise you about what they think, but otherwise as a small or a low resource board, just focus on those 5 or 6 critical factors. And often they actually come out of your strat planning. What are we going to do? What risks are there? Yeah, so doesn't have to be big. I really caution NGOs not to be so hard on themselves. They do a bloody good job with bugger all resources, so just having some movement, covering off the really dangerous stuff, and some movement would always be my advice.
Often it's the financials that seem the hardest. You can see your board or committee members' eyes glazing over when you bring up the finance report. But making sure that your board members understand the financial position of your organisation is critical. How do you ensure that your board understands its financial position?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, great. I'll have a crack.
Yeah, so financial literacy is a practice that's really dear to my heart. I think it's really important that we get comfortable and aware of our attitude and our beliefs around money. That's first and foremost, and I think often board members separate who they are personally with the organisation that they're involved in, and they should, but also some of our unconscious bias or our unconscious values around money can also influence our decision making, because I think it's important that we are clear in ourselves about what are the values that I hold around money, and is there any fears or concerns that I have that might prevent me from making decisions as a result.
It's really important to have at least some people on a board who are sufficiently financially literate. And if the board doesn't have that kind of person, they need to find them and they need to get them on. Our board has a finance committee of people who have a higher level of interest maybe than the general board members, and people on that committee are chosen for their sort of knowledge and expertise. Because a big part of what community trusts do is manage trust funds, then there's a big investment aspect of us looking after our pūtea. We don't make those sorts of investment decisions ourselves as a board. We rely on expert advice. And part of what we do is we have to make sure that we're happy with the expert advice and the expert advisors. And that's probably our main role in terms of our stewardship of the investment funds. Not everybody needs to be a financial guru, but everybody is responsible. And even if someone says, I don't want to become an expert in investment markets, they have to be explicitly and openly prepared to rely on the other people around the table who are, because there's no excuse for not knowing. You're just as responsible whether or not you know or not.
So for us, we've really committed to financial literacy education. We have a great accountant that educates us, and then we've also built a kaupapa Māori set of policies and procedures so that the way that we operate as Māori, particularly things like koha or gifting, is included on our balance sheet. And so that helps us be able to operate as Māori in community, but it also ticks the box in regards to our accounting procedures and also helps our team stay safe when they're out in the community working with our whānau.
The content for these videos was created with the input of more than 30 experienced board chairs, based on their experiences and what they wished they knew when they got their first chair role.